Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about Deceivers, brand new full-length studio album, the first in nearly 14 years from Daath. And I better not see one of y'all try and pull some actually grammar nerd type stuff, because guess what? That's how their name is pronounced. I looked it up. I'm right, you're wrong, cry about it. The Deceivers is the fifth full-length studio album, and as I mentioned a moment ago, the first in nearly 14 years from Daath. What have they been up to in that time? Why did it take so long for them to release a brand new album? I don't know. I'm assuming that this is kind of like a job for a cowboy moon healer situation where life just happened. Everyone grew up. Everyone just had adult things to do for a while. It is what it is, you know? Now, before we go any further, I want to make something very clear. I went into this album completely, totally, 110 million% blind, not knowing anything about this album, not having heard any of the promo singles in advance of this album's release, and also not having known anything about Daath as a band, what they've gone through, what they've done, what they, generally speaking, sound like. As such, I cannot really tell you how this is supposed to compare to other albums in the Daath discography. I cannot really tell you if this is their best or their worst album, but I can tell you that just listening to it on its own, just as a standalone album, The Deceivers is pretty fucking good. I can also tell you that according to Daath, and more specifically according to guitarist, founding member, and overall mastermind E.O. Levi, that this is their biggest, boldest, and most ambitious album to date. The most Daath that Daath have ever sounded. Writing here in a press release, now Daath is more orchestrated, more over the top. We have more melodies and they're beautiful. We're doing all these things that I felt were missing in the past. E.O. was also very picky, apparently, very selective about who specifically to bring into Daath, who specifically to bring onto this album, knowing that he had a very specific vision for the Deceivers and that only certain people would be able to help him execute it. And I would say that he has chosen well and also wisely. On guitars, we have Rafael Trujillo from Obscura and Obsidious. We also have Jesse Zaretti from Binary Code. He also handles a lot of the orchestral stuff on this record. In fact, he's done orchestral session work for Amorphous in the past. On drums, we have Karim Lechner from Septic Flesh, Decapitated, Act of Denial. And returning on lead vocals from a previous iteration of Daath is Sean Zatorsky, who you may also recognize from brief stints in Chimera and Sinsanum. And on top of all of that, there are a bunch of other special guests here to help further flesh out the sound and feel of this album, including Dan Sugarman from Ice Nine Kills, Per Nilsson from Scar Symmetry, Dean Lamb from Archspire, Jeff Loomis from Nevermore and Arch Enemy. Even Mick Gordon, the guy who scored Wolfenstein and Doom Eternal, even he pops up on here. Like, there's a lot of undeniable talent on this record, and it's all almost undeniably, in my opinion, put to good use right away. You've got the very aptly titled opening number, No Rest, No End, for instance, hitting you with barrages of bombastic, over-the-top, symphonic, and melodic death metal, with very fluid and technical interplay between harpsichord and guitar, and tons of, like, muscular, meaty riffage and soaring strings and synthesizers. It's a genuinely exciting and high-octane ride, and I also like how it still ends on a more, like, dramatic note with this kind of, like, evocative, subdued, classical-inspired outro. Very quiet, very eerie. Then there's Hex Unending, which builds momentum with some churning riffs and grooves, leading into some more technical assaults. There are these sections with, like, pounding drums and, like, sinister lead guitar work kind of, like, flying overhead, more venomous, multi-layered vocal assaults, and some atmospheric effects that feel, like, pretty massive. It almost has, like, the weight and the menace of, like, a Black Dahlia Murder-style number, but, like, with a symphonic metal coat of paint. Then there's With 3 Desire, which stuns with an absolutely massive chorus and tons of guitar and synth and orchestral pyrotechnics. unwelcome return, as well as practically overflowing with dark, sweeping, beautiful theatrical arrangements and compositions that are anchored and emboldened by beautiful cathartic guitar work. And I'm really liking the emphasis on atmospheric breaks and transitions in the Silent Foray. You have these very spacious, ethereal sections with choral vocals and occasionally even glitchy beats and textures, and that does a really good job at providing us with a little bit of breathing room. It gives us a little bit of a palate cleanser, but also adding a little bit of cosmic weight to this whole thing. Performance-wise, everyone is giving it their all. I mean, all the guitars are surgically precise, all the keyboard and synth and orchestral stuff is amazing. Vocals are fantastic as well across the record. I do find myself maybe sometimes wanting a little bit more variety in the overall songcraft. These songs are by no means identical, they don't all sound the same, but they do arguably follow pretty similar blueprints and trajectories, and at a certain point you can kind of predict what might happen next, and you're probably right. I found I was, at least when I did do so, when I did try to predict what would happen next. Just saying, don't hate me, I'm just saying. Also, I will say that I found audio was clipping a little bit in some of the most bombastic sections. With all of this orchestral and metal bluster, I think that was inevitable to a certain extent, but just something to point out irregardless. That said, though, I did thoroughly enjoy this record. I started this review thinking I would give it a 3.5 out of 5, leaning towards a 4, but now we're at the end, and I'm kind of I think maybe it should be the other round. I think it should be a 4, leaning towards a 3.5 out of 5. I don't know, that just feels right to me right now, It's got the technicality and the musicianship of something like Flesh God Apocalypse. It's got the darkness of something like Septic Flesh or Dimmu Borgir. And it's got the melodicism of something like Ex Dio. It's very well made, very well put together, very well handled and produced. I think if you love symphonic and melodic death metal, you are going to go absolutely batshit insane for this. To be honest, this is the most I've enjoyed any kind of symphonic metal record in a while. I feel like the orchestral stuff and the symphonic stuff actually adds something to the music. It isn't just there as if it's a garnish we threw on at the last minute, which I really enjoy and appreciate. Again, unfortunately, I can't really tell you where this stands in the Daath discography, but I can tell you that this does inspire me to check out other Daath albums, other albums that these guys have been a part of. Once again, 4 out of 5, maybe leaning towards a 3.5 out of 5. It's not a perfect record, but the parts that are great are really, really, really fucking great, and I really do recommend this. I don't know how, but I just forgot to film the normal outro that I always do. I don't know how. I don't have a good excuse. Anyway, doesn't matter. That's it. Blah, 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 blah. I am not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? What would you like to hear from me next? Look, even more videos right here. Press subscribe. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.